saw, like, over the course of last week, I think if I'm right, that the Standard newspaper carried an article, and in that article it explained, or it brought to light a certain, good afternoon, Omar. So it brought to light this issue of 40 million that was given to media houses to promote government agenda. I think this is the correct description or phrase that was used. That was used on the Standard newspaper article. Now, since then, a whole lot of conversation, came on, and different individuals, kind of had a different view of everything that was going on. So people had their take. Some individuals believed that, yes, it's the right thing to do. Others felt, no, it wasn't the right thing to do. Others condemned it outright. Others were kind of, disappointed with regards to the process. And that is the process of selection. How did certain media houses, how were they selected over others? Why were other media houses left out? And was the bidding process made public? What is the contract about? So far, it seems nobody has actually seen the actual contract between the government and the respective media houses. So it really brought about a lot of dissatisfaction and anger and concerns from various sectors. And now I'm always on social media, so I saw the various commentaries and people making known their dissatisfaction in the sector. Now, this is my take, and I wrote about this on my Facebook. So a lot of people did not like my position, but at the end of the day, I'm really not looking for people to always agree with what I say or what I write. As long as, to my mind, I'm speaking what I believe is my truth and my opinion. And that's why I always emphasize that it is my opinion. I'm not saying what I'm saying is right. I mean, people have got brains. You have social media, it's a wide space. And you can take the good and leave the bad. You could take whatever you want. There's so much information out there on social media. It is your responsibility to be able to sieve between the good and the bad, between what is worthless and what you feel is worthwhile, and what you feel you can discard and what you feel you can retain. So I am not in the business of actually trying to please everyone, because if you start to do that, that is the beginning of that's the beginning of failure, because you cannot please everyone, and it's just dishonesty in itself that is cropping up when you attempt to please everyone or want everyone to always tell you what you want to hear. And this is a very serious issue in Gambia and among Gambians, because people want you to always tell them things that they want to hear. They want you to sing their praise. They want you to hear you say good things about them. They want you to support whatever position they take, regardless of how you feel about it. I'm not made up in that way, so I can't do it. So basically my position is, and if you look at my article and if you go back to read my article, I never talked about the process. That is a topic for a different day. I never talk about the process of selection. I didn't speak about the bidding process. Was it transparent? Was it not transparent? No, I didn't talk about that. I never addressed those issues in my article. But it is something I would do subsequently. But what I was addressing in my article was it was basically for people that were of the opinion that it is wrong for government to promote its agenda. And that is false. That is not true. Every government has a responsibility to promote its agenda. How it decides or how it does the promotion of its objectives, its agenda, how it does its branding is something that they can determine within themselves, within the confines of government. But it is the responsibility of every government to showcase their work, to showcase what they're doing. Now, every other argument is subjective. Every other argument is subjective. President Barrow did not become a president in oblivion. He was voted into office by Gambians. He was voted into office by Gambians. He had over 500,000 votes, if I'm right with my figures. These were 500 Gambians that came together and said, okay, we're going to bestow on this man the office of the presidency. We feel this man is electable. We're going to elect this man as a president. So one person saying that, oh, but he has done nothing. This is subjective. This is, sometimes I don't understand if people I think some people don't even know how to make their case or how to argue their position. I am not saying he has done everything. I never said that in my article. I never said that he was the best president that ever lived. I never said that the government is doing everything beautifully. No, that's not what I said. That is a subjective argument. I can choose to say I've seen nothing that they have done. And other person can choose to say that yes, he has done X, Y, and Z. That is how politics work. People are going to see different things from different point of view, from different angle. And one set of or group of persons, one individual cannot enforce, subject your mentality, your viewpoint, your opinion on others. You cannot do that. Because that is autocratic. That is you forcing, you're instilling your viewpoint, you're instilling your understanding, you're instilling your thought process on another person. I am not saying that they have done a phenomenal job. I'm not saying they have done a lot of things. No, that's not what I said. I did not mention that in my article. What I'm saying is they have a right. They have a right. Government has an inherent right to showcase its work. It is done everywhere else in the world. And that's why I cited an example and I said it is very beautiful because Gambians, and the reason why I did this, and I'm addressing people who are saying, but you're comparing Gambia to America. No, I was not comparing Gambia to America. If you read the preceding paragraph of my post, before I made that citation, what I did say is that Gambians are very fond of taking inspiration from America, from the United States. When they talk about democracy, when they talk about other progressive legislations, when they talk about other things, even when they were discussing the issue of female circumcision, female genital mutilation, they were drawing inspirations from America, from other progressive society, from Western countries. And I was saying that what we do most of the time as Gambians is that we pick and choose when to draw inspiration. So we pick and choose things that favor us. We will say, oh yes, but look at what America is doing, because that is what favors us. That is what fuels our agenda. That is what sides by our own narrative, and that is what we choose to do. But when the narrative goes against us, we choose to ignore them, and that is when we start talking about Gambia is a sovereign state. We make our own decision, we make our own laws, we determine things ourselves. But all of this is kind of a dishonest argument, because when it suits you, you claim ownership. But when it doesn't, you try to discard it. And that was what I was trying to say, that, okay, when it's good, we draw inspiration from the United States. But I'm saying the United States sets aside $1 billion American dollars for advertisement and PR job on behalf of the government. And the point I was trying to make is that governments do, even America does that. It is illogical that it is only the opposition that can always showcase things. Because 90% of the time, the news is dominated by negativity of what government does. So it is the responsibility of government to brand itself. And they're not going to lie in branding themselves, because people have got a mindset. People can decipher what is right and wrong, what is true and false, what is good and bad. But then what happens is government will showcase what they're doing. Now it is the job of the opposition to say, hey, you know what? No, this is what they say they have done, but these are the results. This is good for the country, this is bad for the country. But the point is, government has a responsibility to showcase its work. Government has a responsibility to showcase its agenda. Government has a responsibility to brand itself. And that's the point I try to make. Now, it is a whole totally different argument to say that 40 million is justified at this particular point in time. That's another argument. And there would be different school of thoughts in that argument, in that narrative, because some people wouldn't be able to process and understand why is it that we have a healthcare system that's mostly dilapidated. We have things that are not working. We have NAWEC that does not have power. It's not supplying adequate power to its customers. Some areas in Gambia don't have running water. So you might say, you might make an argument that it is wrong for government to spend 40 million when there are people that are struggling. That is an argument that one could make. But the reverse of that argument is government continues to do a lot of things. Government continue to do a lot of things. Another argument could be, why is Gambia government spending millions of dollars, taxpayers' money, sending Gambians abroad on scholarships to go and study, when some of these Gambians would never come back home to give back to Gambia? Or some of them, once they come back, they serve whatever time it is, they'll go and join private practice or set up their own businesses. Why are people can make that argument that, okay, fine, instead of spending money and sending people to go abroad on scholarship, there's the University of the Gambia, let them go there and take that money and pump it into the health sector. But that is a lame argument, because that is not how government machinery functions and works. And I gave an example. I said that maybe some people don't know. America is a more progressive society. The economy of America is way greater, maybe 100 times than Gambia. America is a larger population. Gambia is a smaller population. But America has a bigger economy. It is a more progressive state. But do you know that America has hundreds of thousands of homeless people that are in the streets that government cannot adequately cater for? There are people who are sleeping on the flyovers, on the footbridges, that don't have accommodation, that don't have food, don't have access to shelter, don't have access to clean water, don't even have proper access to healthcare, to health insurance, to Medicare, various things. But yet still, the American government is pumping trillions of American dollars into fighting a war in a faraway land, where women, children, the vulnerable are killed, are murdered. And one could simply not see the logic and be like, but why? Why wouldn't you take that money? If you take the trillions of dollars that America pumped into the war in Ukraine, if you take the trillions of dollars that America has pumped into the war in Israel, the war in Palestine, the war in Afghanistan, the Vietnam War, you think all these sums of money couldn't have better better been utilized by the average American public or the American individual or the average American who is homeless, without food, without clothing, without shelter, sleeping rough in the streets of America. But the truth is, government does not function in a way like you run your household. It is not 1 + 1 = 2, A and B follows by C. That is not how it works. And the sooner we realize that this is not how it works, the better it is for us. Yes, I agree. I agree that that money could have been better utilized. It can be better utilized. However, the fact is, and this is my argument, that government has a responsibility to brand itself. Because government functions differently. Now, I see a comment from Tamsir. It says 40 million for media propaganda can't be justified. Well, I don't know. Again, that is subjective. You call it propaganda, another person will call it branding, another person will call it showing the average Gambians what the government is doing. So again, that's a subjective argument. What you may see or deem as propaganda might not necessarily be so for another person. You are of the view that the government has done absolutely nothing. The 500,000 Gambians that voted for Barrow believe that Barrow did something, and they believe that they wanted Barrow to continue to be their president. This is a subjective argument. It is a subjective argument. One cannot instill your own understanding, your own perception on the other sector, on the other group. You are all Gambians. Everybody is a Gambian. They all have a right as Gambians to determination, to self-determination, to political determination. They all have a right to choose their leadership. And that is just how politics work. Because that's why I said the other day that democracy, politics is messy. It is premised on an enlightened nation. And sometimes the fruits of democracy goes against our wishes. It goes against our aspirations, but government has a right to brand itself. And that is my argument. I'm not saying the spending is justified. I'm saying government has a responsibility to brand itself, to sell its agenda to the Gambians, for Gambians to know what it is that government is doing. Now, somebody can make the argument that government is not doing nothing. That is your argument. That is your belief. But the people that are supporting President Barrow, they believe that President Barrow is doing something. So it's a ping pong of arguments, of thoughts. And my argument, my position is, this is what is being done. Now, let's reverse the argument. If every single media house in Gambia was given $5 million, do we think the noise would have been this loud? No. The answer is no. And that's the honest truth. The only reason why we have such ferocious noise is because there has been a selection of media houses over the others. Do I agree with it? Absolute no. Absolute no. But then let us flip the coin again. Don't we see the opposition come out and say, you know what, we have to boycott this media house? Why are you boycotting this media house? Because the media house have said things about you that you don't agree with, that you don't like. As far as you are concerned, these media houses must sell your agenda, must speak good of you, and everything that is being said must be to your advantage. Now, the government is not different from the opposition in that line of thinking. You cannot see the government as abstract, because the government is individuals, collective individuals, who have feelings, who have thoughts, who are seeing, who are part of society. When we begin to see government as abstract, then we don't understand, and we kind of juxtapose the functions of government. But then when you see government and understand that government is tangible, it is reality, These are individuals. These are people that have feelings. These are people that are on social media. These are people that wake up in the morning, they go to work. These are people that put their work and energy behind policies. And they see that they're being negatively branded. They have feelings. If you feel a particular media house is anti-government, the government might decide, which I don't agree with, because government has to be equitable and fair, might decide, okay, we're going to go with this. So the argument I want to see, the argument I think we should be having is, why is it that there has been a selection of media houses? Why was it not offered across board? But the argument that this is wrong, that government cannot promote its agenda, and if government advertises, then government is engaged in propaganda, is false. It is a lame argument. It holds no water. There's no justification for that. There's no justification for that, because you could make the same argument about the opposition, that everything the opposition is doing is just political propaganda. That probably if they assume office, they would not be able to achieve quarter of the things that they sell and the things that is contained in their manifesto. You could make that same argument, that it is nothing but cheap political propaganda. But they have a right to sell their agenda. They have a right to brand themselves. Who is the government? The government is us. We have decided that we're going to bestow our powers. We have entered into a social contract with those in government. So the government is us. So if we make the argument that this is not fair, and that is what I wanted to see, and that is what I addressed in my article, that it should cut across board, give it to the media houses, let the respective media houses say, no, we don't want. No, we don't want to be part of this. This is against our ethical standards. Then we could say it is justified. But to select and pick and choose the media houses, even though, like I said, it's an argument that could be made, but because it is government and because it is everybody's collective venture, and because government should be there for every Gambian, irrespective of political affiliation, irrespective of ethnicity, social status, you would expect that this would go across board and every single media house would have the same opportunity. Now, there are those that are making arguments that, but this is not the first time that this has happened. Maybe, albeit in a different form, in a different manner. But some are saying that there are other media houses that have benefited in the past and there was no noise. Whether this is true or not, I don't know. But then what I believe and what I expect to come out is that we would need something like this to be across board, to be very fair. To be very fair. That everybody should feel a part, that it should be the responsibility of every media house to showcase whatever government is doing, just as it is the responsibility of the media houses to hold government accountable. Now, the argument and the question is, does it really mean, and this would not go on the government, but it would go on the credibility and integrity of the various media houses? Does it mean that because government has entered into a contract with them to showcase their agenda, to showcase whatever it is that government is doing, to brand government in a positive light, does it mean that they would not hold government accountable? Now, I'll give you a scenario. I'll give you an example. Who funds the judiciary? The courts. Who funds the courts? Who appoints the judges? I know they're recommended by the Judicial Service Council, but who pays? It is government. It is the taxpayers. Who appoints these individuals to work? Who appoints them to adjudicate? It is the president. Who constitutes the Supreme Court? It is the president. Now, are you going to make the same argument that you're making for the media house, that as long as they've been giving 5 million to do work which is under their purview, to do their own work, then it means they're going to favor the government and they would not hold the government account. Because the same argument could be made in the courts, that the courts would never hold the government to account, that there is no judge in the Gambia that would give a judgment against the state, against the government, against President Barrow, because they were appointed by President Barrow. That President Barrow can fire them. We saw that happen in the previous regime. Judges were fired. The Chief Justice was fired. The Supreme Court was dissolved at some point. It was not constituted. That was why President Jammeh couldn't challenge, or his election petition couldn't gain any traction, because the Supreme Court at the time was not constituted. And it was the responsibility of the president to constitute the Supreme Court. Now, can we make that same argument that because the government is pumping much money into the judiciary, this is taxpayers' money, that therefore every single matter that comes before the judiciary will be decided in favor of the government? That does not make sense. And we don't say that. The reason why we don't say that, the reason why we don't make that argument, is because we believe in our mind, in our mindset, we have decided to hold judges, officers of the court, the judiciary, as people of integrity, as people of credibility. But what we have done now is to make a weak argument to say that these individuals, these media houses, lack credibility. That because of $5 million, that they are not going to hold government accountable. No, that is a subjective view. That is a subjective view, and unless we see real tangible results, then we are not doing anything. It is just a mere accusation that cannot be justified or validated. The Human Rights Commission. Who appoints the commissioners? Who appoints the chair of the Human Rights Commission? Who funds the Human Rights Commission? Who sets it up? Is it not government? We are calling for an anti-corruption commission. Who is going to set that up? Who is going to do the appointment? It is the president. Even if it has to go through parliament for endorsement, it is the president who appoints. Now, do we expect that all these individuals will serve at the pleasure of the president? No, because that's not how government functions and works. If you look at the judgment of the ruling of the High Court in the matter between the clerk of the National Assembly and Tumanjai and other parliamentarians, an injunction was obtained. But when the judge went back and looked at what the precedent was, she decided to set aside that injunction and allow the status quo to continue. And the reason for this, the rationale behind this, if you look at the other subsequent or prior judgment, is because you believe, you hold government in view that they are doing the right thing, until that point that you can ably justify that they have done wrong. So when government appoints a Supreme Court judge, you are believing that government is appointing a person of integrity and that government has done the right thing, until the Supreme Court judge that has been appointed behaves in a manner and way that is not consistent with the values of the judiciary. Then you would decide to say that, you know what, this person acted in bad faith, or this person was appointed in bad faith. But all these things that we're making, all the noise, all the argument, I can understand if you're saying that, okay, no, you cannot do it. It is misplaced priority at this point. Those are subjective arguments. Those are plausible arguments. But to say that it is wrong, to say that government cannot brand itself, that government can use GRTS and stuff like that, everybody can use GRTS. Everybody can use GRTS. Even the opposition can use it. Is their inherent right. It is a national broadcaster. It is not a government owned, well, it's a government owned entity, but it is there for everyone. And that is why I said we are the government. Everybody is the government. Every Gambian is the government. It was Gambians who voted to have this group of individuals steer the affairs of our nation and our country. But you know, the average Gambian is quick to talk about corruption. Yes, there is corruption. But aren't we ourselves corrupted to a certain extent? How many of us go to banks and we don't even wait in the queue, we jump the queue because we know somebody, or we know the teller, or we know somebody from high up in that bank, and our transaction is done when that woman from you know, somewhere near Makunku that doesn't know anyone in that bank would stand in queue for 3 hours. But we believe that we've got very important things to do, and we come and we jump the queue. How many of us, we go to hospitals, and because we have contacts in the hospital, because we know individuals in the hospital, we don't queue. We don't queue. How many of us, how many Gambians can authoritatively say that they got their driver's license through the right channels? That they went for a driving test and got their driver's license? How many Gambians can authoritatively say that I did not give a police officer something to make a driver's license and get it to me in so and so time? That is corruption. But we don't point out, because we've normalized it. As a country, that is nothing. It is normal. We don't, if somebody comes to us and say, but what you're doing is not right, we don't even believe it. How many of us want a passport and we go to immigration, we go to the queue, we beat the system, we beat the queue because we know someone, or because we have money to give to someone to get us what we want at a faster rate. We do that. We don't care about that poor individual that's sitting in that corner waiting for her passport for weeks, who have traveled all the way probably from Basse or wherever to come down to immigration to sit. No, we come, we jump the queue because what? We have something to do. I have a meeting to go, or I have somebody to meet, or my flight leaves at 4 o'clock. How many of us don't do that? So if a person can do that, when you elect those individuals into public office, what will they do? So it is so easy for us to quick and point out and point fingers and say this person is corrupt, this person is doing this person is doing that. But what are we doing ourselves? Maybe it's high time we do an introspection of who we are as a person and what our value system is as a group, as a community. How many people are not angry today because President Diomaye Faye of Senegal came to Gambia to visit President Barrow? How many people are not honestly angry? How many people are not honestly angry? How many people are not asking the questions, why should he come to visit Barrow? Don't forget, Barrow denied, it was Barrow's government that denied the Pastef people a right to was it protest or hold a meeting or whatever. It was Barrow's government that did that. And in our corrupted minds, we believe that because that was done, so we don't understand why should President Diomaye Faye, few weeks after he was elected, would make an official trip to come and visit Barrow. We don't understand that. And the reason we don't understand is because we don't understand how government machinery functions and works. We think government is about defante. No, that's not how government works. Government is bigger than an individual, it's bigger than one person. Some of us would have said, oh, why would he? Me, I won't go. Let him be careful of Barrow. But that is not how government works. So today we see that Diomaye Faye is in Gambia, visiting Barrow. It's not Barrow that went to visit Diomaye Faye. It is Diomaye Faye that came to visit Barrow, because government functions differently, and sometimes as an individual, you cannot comprehend, you cannot understand the dictates of government. You cannot understand how the machinery functions. You need to be an insider in government. You need to have an experience in government. You need to have a perspective to understand how government functions, how government machinery operates. You need to understand the theatrics of diplomacy, of foreign policy. And then you would know that government is not, decisions in government are not sporadic. They are not based by emotions. I see a lot of people making comments. Why is Jomai Faye coming to Gambia to visit Barrow? If it was left to Barrow alone, he would have been supporting Macky Sall. If it was left to Barrow alone, Jomai Faye would never have been president. This is their argument. That is how they see it. That is their perspective. That is their own understanding. But Jomai Faye, as president of Senegal, understanding that Senegal is bigger than him, understanding that the project is bigger than than his own person, understanding the theatrics of diplomacy. The second visit he made when he left his country is to come to Gambia, because that is what diplomacy is. That is what diplomacy is. If it was left to you and me, we'll say, no, the fact they do for them, they didn't. No, that's not how it works. And he recognizes that. He recognizes the importance of Gambia as a sovereign state, collaborating with Senegal and ensuring the values, the objectives of Senegal is met. Senegal is a bigger economy. Senegal is bigger than Gambia. But you would never ever take away the importance that Gambia plays in the geopolitics of Senegal. The geopolitics of Senegambia is one. It cannot be separated, irrespective of who's the leader. So many other leaders have tried to do that, but they can't. Because there's so much political, cultural, ethnic, geographical ties that bind the two countries. So you can sit in your little corner and say that, oh, why is Jomai Faye going to Gambia? Some people would have thought that if Jomai Faye is elected as president, he would never ever set foot in Gambia or even entertain Barrow. But that is not how government functions. Government functions differently. The machinery of government is radically different from our thoughts, from our individual assessment of things. President Jomai Faye might not like President Barrow personally, but the office of the presidency of the Gambia is as crucial and as important to Senegal as any other entity. And that is why he decided his second official visit is to make a visit into Gambia. But 90% of the time we do not understand this. Because we think politics should be about defante. Some people cannot understand, even to a large extent. If you ask me, sometimes I look at it and I don't understand why Sidinjai would be second in command in the National Assembly. Sidinjai was the gentleman that said that Barrow would never be sworn in Gambia, that Barrow would never be president in Gambia, that President Jammeh would never move, he would be here. But today, Sidinjai is one of President Barrow's most trusted aide, because that is the dynamics of politics. And that is why the white man, in his brilliance, coined the phrase that 1,000 days in politics is like a day. A day in politics is like 1,000 years. That is why they coined the phrase that there are no permanent friends or permanent enemies in politics. This is something you have to understand. It is something you have to embrace. It is something you have to appreciate. You can choose to call it that it is lack of integrity. That is subjective. That is your own understanding. That is your business to say so. But that is just what politics is about. And if we are honest to ourselves and we look at it closely, we practice it. The opposition practices on a daily basis. Tell me, how many times don't people come from another party? People who never believed in a particular party would come and join the opposition, and it will be welcomed. It will be welcomed. We cannot say there are no APRC, there are no GDC, there are no PDOIS individuals that have left these respective parties and joined the United Democratic Party. Or the United Democratic Party cannot say that people have not left that party and joined the PDOIS. We can't say that. But at party politics level, we celebrate this. At party politics level, we celebrate this. But then in our feeble understanding and feeble minds, when it happens at the top level of government, we frown upon it and say, why should it happen? But the truth is, if Sidi Njai had decided to join the United Democratic Party, let's assume that he was not pally with Barrow, and he decided at some point to join the United Democratic Party as an opposition, let us be honest to ourselves. Would we not welcome him? Obviously, yes. And that's the truth. It would have been a massive celebration to celebrate Sidi Njai coming into the camp of the UDP, coming into the camp of PDOIS, coming into the camp of GDC. They would have appreciated it and welcomed it and celebrated it. But then, in the typical Gambian fashion, we can't understand that it has happened in government. But the truth is, if you read widely, if you read extensively, if you follow politics in other locations, in other jurisdictions, you would understand that indeed there are no permanent friends or enemies in politics. Who would have imagined that GDC Mama Kande would come to Lawyer Dabo's house, UDP, and sit with Lawyer Dabo to contest the election results? Who could have ever imagined that they would have a common denominator, that they would have a common ground where they would share an objective? But it is because it is politics. It is because politics is not running your household. Politics is not running your business. Politics is different. It is deeper than you imagine because it goes beyond that. Absolutely, Sana. Absolutely, I agree. And Sana is just commenting, would you take the current predicament in Gambia as a classical example of politics and its intricacies? Absolutely. Because politics is all about comparative advantage. Politics is about comparative advantage. It is about strategic positioning. That is what politics is about. So some of the time, we would not understand. And that is why I give an example. That people who are struggling in the UK, people in England who cannot have jobs, who are seeking, they're asking for job creation. The government is saying that, oh, we are struggling to provide this, but we will. Give us time. They don't understand. They can't process the fact that you are telling us that we should give you time. That yes, you're going to create jobs, but it is difficult. It cannot happen in a day. But you're spending billions of pounds sterling in fighting a war that you have no business in a faraway land. But then that is politics. That is governance. And this is something the average man on the street that cannot put food on their table cannot understand. Just look at it from a different perspective, from a different view. If all the money that the UK government is pumping into fighting wars in Ukraine, in Iran, in Afghanistan, and everywhere else, if you divided that money among struggling British people, they would live a better and more productive life. So if you sit from the outside, you would tell yourself, but this does not make sense. Why is this happening? If you talk to people in England, they will tell you that they don't understand why I will get up and go to work every day and I will be taxed so much, but the government will give somebody money to sit at home and not work. They don't understand. And for the average individual, just stop it. Why are you doing this? They don't get it. They can't process it. So the honest truth is some of the decisions of politics, some of the strategic positioning of governance and government cannot be understood by the ordinary mind. If you look at it from a perspective of an individual. So we need to understand these things. You see, Nelson Mandela, in one of his interviews, a journalist, a US journalist, was trying to pin him down on the issue of, I think I'm not sure if it was Vietnam or just one of these countries, I can't remember. And then he responded to him. The guy asked him a question. This was one of his visits to the United States. He was trying to pin him down. And the guy asked him a question, and Nelson Mandela turned to him and said to him, let me tell you what the problem is. He said the problem with America is that America feels that their own enemies should be our own enemies. That their own friends should be our own friends. And Nelson Mandela turned to the journalist and continued to say that, but that is not plausible. That is not possible, because the interaction between us and them is different from the interaction between the United States and them. I think it was North Korea or someplace, I can't remember. But he said to them, during apartheid, the support that we got from this country, we did not even get it from the United States. So today, because of politics, you want us to make this country our enemies because they are your enemies. He says, no, sir, this is not how South Africa would operate. We will operate on a different level. The same Nelson Mandela, after he was in prison for 27 years, 27 hard years, he came out of Robben Island and he stood at the prison gates. And he said he advised himself, and if you have not read the autobiography of Nelson Mandela, Long Walk to Freedom, I will urge you to read it. He said, I advised myself that if I don't put away the hatred, if I don't put away the suffering, if I don't put everything and lay it down at this gate at Robben Island, I will never be able to progress. And I will never be able to emancipate South Africa. I will never be able to stamp out apartheid. I will never be able to rule the whole of South Africa. He said, for my benefit, for my healing, I have decided to leave hatred. Nelson Mandela left Robben Island. The first meeting, the first dinner, the first meal that Nelson Mandela shared was with de Klerk, was with F.W. de Klerk, and this is the man that imprisoned and subjected Nelson Mandela to the worst forms of treatment ever imaginable. The first meal he shared was not with his compatriots. It was not with Winnie Mandela, that suffered and sacrificed her entire life for Mandela. It was not with his fellow compatriots in the ANC. It was with the person that oppressed him. When Nelson Mandela decided that he was going to run under the ticket of the ANC, when they drafted the contracts, when they entered into agreements, he decided he was going to share a government with de Klerk. He was going to share a government with his oppressors because he understood that was the way he can attain, he can achieve the objectives of a unified and emancipated South Africa. So politics is not how we see it as an individual. Politics is not about the constant defante. So today, a classic example, the government of President Barrow refused to grant a permit for the PASTEF party to hold any rally whatsoever. People can attribute it to the close proximity, close relationship between Macky and President Barrow. But today, the first visit or the second visit, official visit of Jomaifai is to President Barrow. He did not wait and say, you know what, I'm not going. President Barrow will come. There are people that are so angry right now. They're fuming because they cannot understand. They don't understand because for them, Barrow should have been Jomai's enemy. But they forget that geopolitics, diplomacy, foreign policy, and the intricacies of governance and government structure and machinery has brought them together. If you look at Gambia, the ruling government cannot appreciate anything that the opposition does. Anything the opposition, even if the opposition have real, tangible, progressive ideas for the country, the ruling government will frown upon it because it is coming from the opposition. And you know who suffers? The country continues to be retarded by growth. And the country continues to stall progressively. Vice versa. Whatever the government does, as long as it emanates, it comes from government, the opposition would criticize and see it as bad. There is no one time you can see in Gambia that the opposition will come out and commend a decision of the president and commend a decision of the ruling government. But the opposition keep forgetting that, you know what, their aspiration, their aim, their objective is to be in power, is to be in government. And how would they expect the opposition to behave to everything that they do? So unfortunately, I cannot always, as a person, fault everything that emanates from government. It is cluelessness on my part, and I don't believe in it. If you feel you don't have to follow me on social media, don't. Protect your mental health. I always tell people my mental health is quite very important to me. And if I feel something is disturbing my mental health, if I believe something is disturbing my thought process, I move away from that. If you feel that you want me to speak every time to things that favor you, when I speak on things that the government is doing wrong, the opposition celebrates. When I speak on things that the opposition is doing wrong, the government, the ruling party celebrates. Because the average Gambians wants to hear what favors them. The average Gambian wants you to speak on things that make them happy, that make them feel good. They want you to sing music to their ears. So 1 minute I might be the most honest person because dependent on what I say. I might be the most dishonest person, dependent on the position I take. My brother, my sister, you are the confused one. Because you're the one dancing and jumping, sitting and standing. I'm not. I'm constant in my position. And I would always speak my mind. And like I said, I've always said this. What I say, what I talk about are basically my opinion. My perspective, my understanding of things. I am not saying it is gospel. I'm not saying it should be accepted across board. No, I am not saying that. All I'm saying is I have taken this position based on my understanding, based on my viewpoint. And when you read what I write, don't just speak a line and run away with it because I write in context. I write in context. And I build my argument systematically from my opening line, my opening paragraph, to my closing line, my closing paragraph. I build my objective. I build my theme on what I'm writing about. I never said that yes, it is good, it is timely that 40 million should be given to the media houses. I never said the process was fair. I never said that other media houses should be sidelined. What I did say is that the government has a right to brand itself. The government has a right to sell its agenda. The government has a right to advertise whatever it is doing. Now, if you think the government is not doing anything, that is subjective. It is from your viewpoint. It is your experience and your understanding. If another person thinks the government is doing something, it is their viewpoint, their understanding. So it's all a matter of being subjective. It's a matter of coming to agree. But the point I try to make is that government indeed has a responsibility to brand itself. So anyways, like I said, this is going to be a short one. I'm going to go back to my cooking. And I wish you guys all the best. And I'm going to go back to watching President Diomaye Faye's visit. And I hope as Gambians, we would understand that the PASTEF theory, it worked for a reason and a purpose. And it is a topic for another day, because I've started writing on that. I stopped at some point midway, but it's something to look at. That I know a lot of Gambians have said that, oh, the PASTEF theory was copied from Gambia. But when you look in depth into the PASTEF movement, you would realize that it is radically different from what happened in Gambia. Usman Sonko, the Prime Minister, was the one that chose Diomaye Faye. And this was not done ad hoc. It was somebody he himself mentored and prepared. So, subjectively, he always knew that there's a possibility that I might not be the one to captain this boat. So the PASTEF movement didn't have to fight among themselves to elect a leader. They didn't have to waste time thinking about who should be the flag bearer. The focus was not derailed by seeking or looking at who would better fit their objective. When he opted for Diomaye Faye, he did not even know that he would not make it on the ballot box. But it was a well-conceived plan, because it was not about who steers the affairs of the country, but what the project, the objective was. But like I said, it's a conversation for another day. I wish you all a beautiful afternoon, and God bless. Thank you.